to our audience, our growing audience here, which is made up of people from the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, and I hope throughout Northwestern University. I want to welcome you to our seminar this afternoon, which is at the time of our environmental engineering seminar, but we've expanded it to host our social equity and racial justice seminar series, which we have initiated this year. I'm going to hand this over to Dave, who will then sort of get the program off. But I want to thank everyone who's here. This is great. Just in the last 30 seconds, about 30 more people have signed on. So this is wonderful. Far more than our usual 35 people that show up for the Friday afternoon seminar. When we don't have cookies and coffee, fewer people show up. So Dave, I'm going to hand it off to you then.
All right, thank you very much, Kim. Those of you that don't know me, I'm a professor and the director of undergraduate studies here in civil and environmental engineering, and I just want to thank you all for attending today's social equity and racial justice seminar. This is the third seminar in this series. We've been doing them once per quarter throughout this academic year, and this is the first in the series to focus on architecture, which is a really important topic for our department. As many of you know, we have a vibrant program in architectural engineering and design here at Northwestern. And this program recently expanded into a full-scale minor program, which is accessible to students from a broad background of undergraduate majors. And I'm very thrilled that in just a month, we're going to graduate our first recipients of this minor, some of which I'm sure are on or will be on very shortly in the audience. So this is a very exciting time for architecture at Northwestern. And I'm very pleased to welcome representatives from this program, both students and faculty, to the seminar today. So speaking of faculty, our introduction to our seminar speaker today came from one of our own architectural engineering and design faculty, Luis Collado. In addition to the critical role Luis plays as an adjunct faculty at Northwestern, Luis also has a day job in which he is principal and founder of STL Architects, a Chicago firm that has exciting projects throughout the world, including a very big one going on close to home right now in the design of the O'Hare Global Terminal and Concourse. As Kim mentioned, Luis knows our speaker, Lee Bey, quite well, and I'm very happy to turn the floor over to Luis to formally introduce Lee.
Yes, thank you, David. I also want to mention that I co-teach the course in architecture with my my partner and founder of the firm also, Jose Luis de la Fuente, Scott Cyphers from Booth Hansen, and many other collaborators that join us every year in this long path, helping students at Northwestern becoming more aware of the importance of architectural design in ways that hopefully shapes their careers. But today I have a pleasure to introduce Lee. Lee has dedicated his career to advocating and raising awareness of how urbanism, architecture, and design shape the lives of so many people. I met Lee Bey right around 2001, 2002, I think it was. I think at the time Lee was writing still an architecture critic for the Chicago Sun-Times, the venerable Chicago Sun-Times, and he was asked to join the mayor's office, and that's how I got to know him. I remember thinking, why was it so uncommon for a mayor of Chicago to include the voice of architecture into the conversations that shape policy in our city? Frankly, you would imagine that this appointment would be a recurrent thing, that in a city with a history like Chicago, there would be a permanent architectural seat in City Hall. But that was not the case. It certainly was the first time that I heard about such a thing. And Lee definitely left a mark in the city. Following his, I think you were in City Hall for about 3 years. Following these 3 years or so, Lee continued this pursuit or this personal interest that he's made his career of educating people about the importance of the built environment. So he's taken leadership positions in education institutions at UIC, the University of Chicago, I think most recently, right, Lee, Illinois Tech, or formerly IIT. Lee has served the community through nonprofit organizations like the Center for Neighborhood Technology, the Woods Fund of Chicago, the Chicago Central Area Committee, spoke before. He's a frequent guest speaker in appearances with WBEZ. He even has his own podcast, right, Lee? The Lee Bey's Soul Closet. He's an all-round great guy, lover of architecture, influencer for the right things. And the topic of today, his recent book, Southern Exposure, The Overlooked Architecture of Chicago's South Side. That was my Christmas present last year. I opened the book, took a photograph and sent it to Lee right away. Right. I couldn't wait to see the book. I was really excited. It's really, he has reminded us that Chicago is a large metropolis with forgotten architecture that certainly deserves a more in-depth look than what has been the norm. So without further ado, I really have the pleasure to introduce you all to Lee Bey. Lee, welcome.
Thank you. Good to be here. And yeah, I can't believe, Luis, it has been 20 years since we met. Yeah, gosh, time flies when you're having fun. Well, thank you everyone for joining in. I guess I can just sort of jump right into the talk here, so we can have plenty of time to ask and answer questions later. Let's see if I can get the screen shared.
Yeah. Oh, good, because I forgot to make sure that we were all okay. You are a pro at this. Okay, great.
Well, we'll see. We will see.
Good.
Oops, let's see here. Get back to the beginning. Oh, so I guess I'll just go ahead and jump in. So that's the cover of my book. And just to show you how things go full circle, the publisher of this book is Northwestern University Press. So it's doubly an honor to be here and to talk about this subject. So the root of this book, several roots for this book. My time in the mayor's office, the things I wrote about as architecture critic, which tended to focus on the south and west sides, which I felt had been overlooked by, architecture tour providers, by the architectural press generally, and nationally and locally. The South Side, was sort of like this no man's land for many people. But if you grew up on the South Side, live on the South Side, the kind of buildings that are there. So I just to go back, probably about 20 years. I was up one night with my youngest daughter, who's now 21, and she was crying. She was a baby, so I'm up feeding her. And this movie comes on, Lifeboat, Alfred Hitchcock, right? Love a Hitchcock movie. So I thought, I'm going to see this. You guys know if you know Hitchcock, you know the plot of this book. A ship is in the Atlantic. It gets hit by a Nazi torpedo and sinks. And these are the survivors that are there. So as I say, it's the love boat without any love. So at one point, and there they are on the boat. Poor Canada Lee, all the way to the right there, gets left out of the poster. But at least he's there in the publicity still. Hollywood actors and actresses of the day. So one of the stars of the movie is Tallulah Bankhead. So I'm watching this in the middle of the night, right? And she falls in love, or she's interested in William Bendix, the actor William Bendix's character on the boat. And she turns to him and she says, "You, darling, are from the gutter. The funny thing is, I'm from the same gutter." And William Bendix, without missing a beat, says, "South Side?" And he means of Chicago. So I'm like, in the middle of the night, I'm mad already. I'm thinking, you're making jokes about the South Side. Oh my goodness. So the movie progresses on, and she has a Cartier bracelet. You can't see it here. She has a Cartier bracelet on her wrist. And she says that was her ticket from back of the yards, which is a real Chicago neighborhood, to the Gold Coast. So at one point in the movie, in all the drama, the bracelet slips off her wrist and falls into the water. And I think to myself, that is what you get for turning your back on the South Side. But in that interchange between the two, there is something of a truth that we grapple with and deal with on the South Side to this day, which is the South Side of Chicago is a place to avoid. It's a place to leave. It's a place to come from, but not a place to be. And a lot of that, particularly at the time of that movie, and certainly in the decades that follow, was shaped by race. The South Side becomes the place where African Americans up from the South, escaping the boot of Jim Crow and other pressures and racist things happening down South, are beckoned, are summoned just about to Chicago as part of the Great Migration. Other northern cities too, from people like Robert Abbott, who was the publisher of the Chicago Defender, who heard the call from the Swifts and the Armours and the others who own industry in Chicago, and they needed workers. So the same call that brought in immigrants from Europe and from Mexico and from southern parts of America and from China, from throughout the world, Japan, from throughout the world, also brought Black people from the South by the tens of thousands. This begins to shape the trajectory of the South. Well, I shouldn't say this. Racism begins to shape the trajectory of the South Side when the Black population begins to grow. And we all know that the tail of the South Side, the reason why Tula Bankhead wanted to get away, and the reason why she saw as the gutter was the fact that the South Side has always sort of been seen as this place to get away from, and it only becomes magnified when this place becomes more and more African American. So as the people are treated poorly by the city, it only stands to reason that the architecture would, the places that the people inhabit, also begins to become treated this way as well. And as a result, the architecture of the South Side begins to be ignored. South Side is huge. We tend to lose track of it from an urban planning standpoint. It's 186 square miles. So it is as big as Philadelphia in terms of square miles. People tend to think of the South Side as this kind of place somewhere across Roosevelt Road, but it's really 60% of the city. So when we ignore the South Side, when we don't give attention or honor to the architecture and to the people of the South Side, we're essentially ignoring 60% of the city. So the idea of the book was to sort of talk about the beautiful buildings that are here in intact neighborhoods, of which there are many, although we see a different kind of representation often in the media of the place as the South Side and the West Side as a place of abandonment and disinvestment. And that is there. But there are also the things that I'm going to show you. So we'll just go ahead and jump in. So this is Errol Saarinen law library at the University of Chicago. Now, this is one that always, particularly when I'm talking in and around the University of Chicago, this one always kind of gets the most discussion, right? Because it's like, how is this an ignored building? It is, and two great examples. This book began as an exhibition as part of the 2017 Architecture Biennial. And this photograph, which I had printed very large, 2 feet by 3 feet, 2 feet high and about 3 feet wide, a little more, was a prominent place in the exhibition, which was at the DeSable Museum right there at 57th and Cottage Grove. And the University of Chicago is literally across the street to the east. I would hang out in the gallery just to hear what people were saying, because I'm still taking notes for the book and trying to figure out what interests people. And I would have University of Chicago students point to this and say, "Where is this building?" And I think, it's on your own campus. How can you forget it? There was a documentary by Errol Saarinen's son, I believe, in 2016, exhaustive documentary, looks at his work and all of his work, from the TWA terminal to the St. Louis Arch and all kinds of things. And somehow they skipped this building. And, being a South Sider, born and raised and a native, I kept thinking, well, if that building were on the North Side, they would have found it. If it were in the South Loop, they would have found it. But they skipped over it because it was on the South Side. And in a way, this image gave birth to the exhibition, which of course then gave birth to the book. But architecturally, what a masterpiece. This beautiful folded accordion, glass accordion building set above Bedford limestone, built in 1959. The groundbreaking Richard Nixon, who was vice president, got invited to it, and the students didn't want him to come. Wrote a letter to the university president saying, don't come. They didn't trust him. So even then they knew something was kind of shaky with Tricky Dick. But just a great presence there on 61st Street near Woodlawn, Many people miss it because it actually sits behind a fence, a wrought iron fence, and it's pushed way back. So you don't really see it this way unless you go behind the fence and really check it out, but certainly worth the effort. Another look at it, I mean, just, Saarinen, right? I mean, just the rational nature of the building, the angles, all those things. I mean, it's a beauty. Luckily, it's not endangered. The university spent several $1 million, obviously, about a decade or so ago, restoring the building. I think it was Canon Design when they were OWP&P did the work, so it shines for another year, and the interior is spectacular as well. This has turned out to be the favorite photograph in the book, the one that gets the most. I get the most email about this, and the most reaction. This is Pride Cleaners at 79th and St. Lawrence on South Side in Chicago's Chatham community. As you can see from looking at the houses on the left, on the right, a traditional pre-1920, the 1920s, pre-war, certainly, neighborhood. If you were to turn around in this photograph and check out the buildings behind us, the commercial buildings behind us, to the east and to the west, you'd see terracotta buildings, flats over apartment stores, very traditional. And then in 1959, this thing comes rolling in. You can imagine the disruptor this must have been. Hyperbolic paraboloid roof. So since the roof self-supports, there's plenty of room inside, unobstructed room inside for all the cleaning equipment and dry cleaning equipment and the people. Untouched when this photograph was taken in 17, literally from jump, and it begins to show some wear. Fortunately, a new owner bought the building right after I took this photograph. Shows you how my luck is, and he spruced it up a bit, and the building looks pretty good. He fixed that window, which is great. It was funny putting this in the book and in the exhibition. Everyone thought the building was abandoned because of that board there. So I had to find for the book and the exhibition an image of the woman coming out, the lady coming out with her clothes. Hopefully that will send the message that the building is still active, remains active, was active when I took the photograph. Now, what's also interesting about this is this great sign, electric sign, Pride Cleaners, which once years ago when I was in the mayor's office, me and another colleague got the owner at the time, the old owner, to turn it on, and it actually still works. It still worked then, although the thing was buzzing and clicking. If you look at the lower center of the photograph, you see kind of a gray box, or I guess it's dark gray box. That's where the electrics are. And we were standing by this thing and we could hear it hissing and popping. And I just thought we're going to burn the city down a second time and found our way into infamy. But the new owner is looking to restore the sign and has been talking or has been in some kind of conversation with the city's landmarks division to get the sign repaired and restored again. Here's another kind of disruptive piece of architecture. This is GN Bank at about 46 in King Drive. It had been Illinois Service Federal Bank, Black-owned bank in both cases. Ghanaians own it now. African Americans from Bronzeville built it. They built this building in 1961. And one of the regrets is I took this photograph on a Sunday and I never got a chance to make it back to photograph the inside. But the inside, at least 3 years ago, had been untouched since 1961. So, there's kind of these teals and other things on the inside. It looks like where Don Draper could have kept his money in Mad Men. So once the pandemic leaves, I guess now it is open for business now. I'm looking forward to get in there and taking some follow-up photographs. Here's another great example of an overlooked building. This is Chicago Vocational High School, 2100 East 87th Street. This is actually my alma mater. This is where I graduated from high school. I really wanted to make sure was in there because when I was architecture critic for the Sun-Times, people, at least once or twice a year would email me or send me or call me up because people used the phones back then and say, I was leaving town on the Skyway and I saw this giant factory at 87th Street. What is that? And I would tell people, as I tell people today, that's a high school, but you're not seeing it the best way. If you get a chance to get off the Skyway at 87th Street and go check it out, because it is, first of all, it's the second largest high school in Chicago, although we always believed as a CVS student, Chicago vocational student, that our school was actually bigger than Lane Tech, and no one ever, we never measured it to see. But at the very least, it's the second largest high school in Chicago, and one of the largest Art Deco, kind of like Art Moderne, kind of WPA modern buildings that you'll see in Chicago. It rambles along 87th Street for almost a block and a half, and it's punctuated by these wings with columns. This is the athletic wing on the east side of the building. And then to our left, a block and a half to our left is a wing just like this. That's the auditorium wing. And so it's interesting that in a vocational school, athletics and arts are brought to the front and given prominence in the school's design. I can tell you as a kid playing, having gym class in there, and going there in the 80s, in the early 80s, you felt like a king going in all those columns. I mean, it was just a presence that you felt going about. Here's the main entrance. How about that typeface called Broadway, where it says Chicago Vocational School? This typeface had only been invented 6 or 7 years before the school was designed. So the idea that a vocational high school for at the time, actually, it says 1938, you see at the top, but it didn't get built until 1941 because, construction delays, Chicago, it's kind of what we do, right? But the idea of a vocational school of 4,000 that was designed to educate a class of people, working class, it's on the southeast side of Chicago, of people to prepare them for the 20th century, where there was air conditioners to fix cars, to keep running, things to make out of wood, things to print. That was my major print shop. That this was a forward-looking idea, and that was expressed in the architecture. The columns that are very literal here, and at the auditorium wing are abstracted and modern here. But just a great-looking building. It's worth going by there on a Saturday, on a good Saturday morning, sunny Saturday, where the south light is shining on it this way, and really take your time and really check it out. Another view of the gymnasium wing, those beautiful columns that are backlit. As you can see, there's a row of lights behind them, and really impressive architecture. Here we go to the South Shore community. This is a building, this is a house that is designed by John Van Bergen, who worked with Frank Lloyd Wright, and I think took over his studio, I think, when Wright when Wright left town in Oak Park. But it was built, designed, patterned, I should say, after Wright's fireproof house for $5,000, under $5,000. I forget the title. And that's right here at 71st and Paxton, 7121 Paxton. It's a landmark. Luckily, also, oh, by the way, the thing about Chicago Vocational, the fear is, because the school was built for 4,000, there's only a couple hundred students that go there now. Much of the school has been closed off. So the fear is that, a lot of the school has been closed off. So the fear is that the school could either undergo some kind of selected demolition to kind of right-size the school to its current population, or they could just move those students out and the school will close entirely. The public school system hasn't announced either of those options, but the fear is there. So some alums, some preservationists in the city are really looking at this building with some fear because, of the concern over what could possibly happen to it. Not the case here. This is a city landmark, protected. It's on a national register, and it has had a succession of good owners who've kept the house in pretty good repair. This is again at 71st and Paxton in South Shore. South Shore has some of the best residential architecture in Chicago. And again, like much of the South Side, when you hear about South Shore, it's usually in some kind of controversy or crime. But again, on a good Saturday, a good Sunday, when the traffic is light, you can drive around. This is a particularly good block to check out. Or if you don't drive, you catch the train, catch the Metro Electric train from downtown, catch the branch that goes down 71st Street, get out and really take a look at this wonderful neighborhood. Now for this house, we're going to go inside a little bit. These are actually friends of mine, the Trotter family, who own the house for, I don't know, maybe a couple of years, maybe 5 years or thereabout. Joanna works for the Chicago Community Trust, but we know each other from our time back at the University of Chicago together, working at the University of Chicago. But look at that fireplace, man, that beautiful Roman brick in the fireplace. And one of the things that Van Bergen did that was different than Wright is that he added this porch that's behind the kids and the ladies to the back. But the woodwork and and they've furnished it in a way like the previous owners did, furnished it in a way that keeps the integrity of the house. But just a great place to see. Here's an interesting modern addition to the Woodlawn community. This is 6500 South Eberhard. This is a building also from 1959. Oh, by the way, the Allen Miller house is from 1915. This is a house from 1959. And, again, like with Chatham, you can look to the left, see the building that's there, look to the right, see the building in the distance, and see that this is a neighborhood that was, again, largely built before the war, before World War II. This building comes along, this house comes along, designed by Roger Marjoram, who was an African-American architect. I think he did some time at SOM, worked here, and then goes to Detroit and really, makes a name for himself. I think Mr. Marjoram has passed away only about 4 or 5 years ago, but he designed this house for E.J. Ingram, who was an African-American doctor who worked at a Providence hospital and other places at the time. And when we talk about the economic disparity on the South Side, I mean, not to the necessarily the disinvestment, but just the price in home prices. This house was for sale for about $160,000 a few years ago, and couldn't find a buyer. And people were walking through it, they were checking it out, but then they would run the comps or do whatever. And even this house, one of a kind, modernist house, we'll take a look at the inside, could not find a buyer. I want to get back to that one. This is a look. Well, let's see. We can go here. The house has a side entry. In fact, that's the realtor who's showing me around as I'm taking the photographs for the book and for the exhibition. Look at that curved wall that separates the entrance from the dining room that's behind it, and that marvelous staircase leads down to a bar, and I mean straight down to a bar. So it's funny when a winding staircase takes you to the bar, because you're going around and around, you get to the bottom of the stairs, and there's a bar right there, and which is very much of the time that is. But again, had trouble finding a buyer. Found a buyer after about a year, I say, who bought it for $130,000. Made some unfortunate. It's not a landmark. Made some unfortunate modifications, let's say, on the inside. Kept that wall though, but there's a. Let's see, do I show it? No, I don't show it. There's a similar wall that's straight that separates this room from the kitchen, which is to our left, and they punched a hole in it so you can look through. Killed me. But still, this is an interesting find that was in the house. This is a walkie-talkie of sorts, in the house that you could call to your, family in other rooms. I got a chance to talk to the daughter, who of E.J. Ingram, sent her a copy of the book. We've talked over the years about this, and she said she still remembers her father clicking on that thing and calling them, although the house was only maybe 1,200, 1,300 square feet. You could yell and hear throughout the house, but that's not as much fun as going to the talkaphone and getting it that way. And it still worked, which is pretty cool. Here's a great building. This is the Yale Apartments. And by the way, just so you're keeping track, 6500 South Eberhard. This one is. This is 6565 South Yale in the Englewood community. Gives you a sense of what Englewood was like when it was built in the late 1800s. Great apartment building. And this is the kind with, you go inside, and if you've been on Open House Chicago, you've seen this. This is the kind where the apartments all ring a central court, right? And you've seen these things in, particularly European crime movies of the 40s, it seems like, that the bad guy always goes inside a building like this and chases someone up the elevator, and the elevator is, rising up from floor to floor, and you can see it. But just a great building and a great save. When I was an architecture critic, I wrote about this building 22 years ago, and it was falling apart. I got on the roof of this building. I was young then, I didn't know any better. And the roof is spongy. I bet if you jumped up and down, you would have ended up all the way down in the basement of this thing. And a guy who was on his way from Sox Park home hits traffic. He was a developer, and he gets off the expressway to take a shortcut and passes this place and thinks, I got to save it. But if this building, and the building kind of has a near twin on the north side, the Brewster Apartments, while obviously banks would line up to fund the rehab for a building like that, a building like this, if it were on the north side where there's capital and it's seen as a more desirous place to lenders. Here, it took a ton of tax credits, of funding from the Department of Housing, federal tax credits to create the capital stack to make this successful. And, 15, 18 years on, they're about 12 years, 13 years on, the building looks fantastic, clean, spruced up. The apartments are for seniors. And again, they open it up on Open House Chicago, which shows what happens. So these buildings can be saved, but then we also have to be mindful of that disparity in property value that makes it easier to save a building if it's north of Madison Street, makes it increasingly tough if it's south. Look at that, look at that entry. John T. Long was the architect, and he was a student. He worked for Louis Sullivan, and you can tell from the floral, the kind of organic detail the building has got. Another example, this is a Frank Lloyd Wright house from 1909. That's in West Pullman. So it's 12147 South Harvard, built in 1909. No, built in 1900 for an attorney. This was his weekend getaway place. The Calumet River, which wasn't very far from here at the time. Well, it still isn't, but there was a more unobstructed pathway to the Calumet River from here. He could ride his horse. There are stables in the back. And the house has only been in a handful of families, maybe 3, since it was built. What was interesting about this is that it too, the summer that I photographed for the book, summer of 17 and 18, had been for sale. It was originally around $200,000, couldn't sell. Mind you, it sits on a eighth of an acre of land. So it couldn't sell for nearly 200. It couldn't sell for 175. And it couldn't sell for 145. And I think it ended up going around 6 or 8 months ago for 135,000. Doesn't need a ton of work. I mean, it's a 100-year-old house, so it needs what a 100-year-old house needs, but it's livable. It isn't like it was a wreck on the inside. This house, if you know Oak Park, and many of you do, and certainly out in Evanston, you could name your price for this house. But here on the south side, when there are foreclosures, again, the banks see property here a little differently. It can make a house like this, no matter how unique it is, a tough sell. Let's look at the inside. The carpet might be a little bit unfortunate, but you can yank that up. But the stairway is just magnificent. And a look at the fireplace that's in the living room. Just a few more. This is First Church of Deliverance at 42nd and 43rd and Wabash, an adaptive reuse project, very early actually. This was a hat factory that the Black congregation, along with his Black architect, Walter Thomas Bailey, and structural engineer, Charles Sumner Duke, who also did the structural engineering for the Michigan Avenue Bridge, the DeSable Bridge over the Chicago River. They were friends. They got together for this early mega church. They reclad the building in terracotta. So we think of terracotta as being what you use to bring antiquity to a building, gargoyles and that kind of stuff. Here it is to make a building look modern. And with Duke, now I can't remember which half. I think the left half was of what you see. The left half, where the top, split down the middle there. The left half was the hat factory, and the right half may have been added on, or the other way around. I always get them confused. But anyway, there was 2 buildings, and Sumner Duke with an arch that's invisible just about, although it runs behind those row of glass blocks on the 2nd floor, creates an arch that supports and creates this beautiful space open space on the inside. The towers came a little bit later, and the pastor Clarence Cobb at the time nicknamed them Old Testament and New Testament, the towers. So you look inside, and one of my favorite worship spaces in the city. The suspended cross comes along in 1950, but you can see what Duke's work did in creating this space, which actually is a little bit larger. It's larger than it looks on this photograph. If you look at the seats, you can count the seats a little bit, rough count, you can get a sense of how large this place really is on the inside. But just a great thing. Again, an early mega church. Luckily, it's not endangered. In fact, they've done some repair to the building since I took these photographs. Always the case. So on the building itself, not the towers, the second floor windows, I think the first floor windows were not originally glass block. So they were able to put the original windows back in, which are divided light windows, and clean it up a bit. They fixed the deterioration at the top of the towers. I think Landmarks Illinois helped out with a grant in that case, and this thing really looks good now. Go by there if you get a chance, because they're eminently proud of this building. If you go near there, they'll come on, you want to see the inside, and check it out. It's really good looking. So really quickly, to get to some other spaces, this is a, looks like it could be Washington Park or Jackson Park. This is like a hidden little park at 78th, sort of, at Eggleston, just north of 79th Street. If many of you know the Rock Island or catch the Rock Island Metro train in, you get north of 79th, you kind of pass this up, but you're elevated. Built in the 1800s, this is a city park with a 2-block long lagoon that runs down the middle of it. Fell into disrepair. The neighbors agitated during the 90s, 80s and 90s to get it repaired. The park district put some money into it, got it repaired, dredged, and the fountains aerating the water. They put fish in here. It's one of the better fishing spots away from the lake in the city, and goes to show you what can happen when you put just a little investment into these communities. What can happen? Another look at it. You can see, if you look to the right by the tree, you can see a man fishing there as well. But a great neighborhood congregating spot. Very quickly, this is Oakwood Cemetery. Cemetery movement, really important. We talk about parks and parks design. At the same time, there's this equally strong movement to change the way cemeteries looked, to get them away from the idea of a boneyard in the back of a church and really make them pleasant places, little glimpses of heaven that you can see. In fact, that was the idea behind this one, and Rose Hill and Graceland and other countless of the numbers of these cemeteries across the country, which was that you were sort of getting a little glimpse as you took your loved one to their final resting place. You were getting a little glimpse of heaven before you said goodbye. This is Jeannie Gang's Lovazorio Center at 76 and Aberdeen. Overlooked piece of architecture, if there ever was one, made by clearly one of the world's famous architects. It was completed right when she completed Aqua Tower, and Aqua Tower justifiably gets all the shine, and this project not so much. Jeannie and I have known each other for years, and she was so happy that I put it in the book. She came to one of my book signings and had me sign the page where that it's on, and it's just good. I mean, community centers and childcare centers, particularly in poor neighborhoods, poor Black and brown neighborhoods, are typically dismal looking places, right? Just because that's the way the financials worked out. Here was an idea to bring light and design and beauty to this building type, and it works really well. Lastly, I do believe transport, one of the new bridges across Lakeshore Drive, finally breaching that sort of separation between the lake and the predominantly Black communities north of Hyde Park and south of downtown. The bridges that were there were raggedy, inaccessible, ADA non-compliant, all kinds of things. And the idea with this one and two more, one that's already there and another one that's coming online and being built now, I do believe, is to kind of repair that breach and give these Southside communities access to the lakefront. This is the new 95th Street station at the CTA, the new 95th Street terminus. Takes Myron Goldsmith's former station along the line and really makes it larger, almost like an airport on the inside, to help the connectivity of the South Side. There's ultimately going to be a line extension of the line to 130th Street, and this becomes an interesting way station along the way. But the idea of improving the connectivity between the South Side, the far South Side, and downtown. And with that, that is it.
All right, thank you very much, Lee.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we have some time for questions. I think we can, if you want to throw a question into the chat, or just note that you want to ask a question into the chat, I can sort of address them in order as they go.
Got a question.
Yep, go ahead.
So first of all, wonderful presentation. Thank you very much. That was great. I had a question sort of about the future and kind of, you know, I'm not very familiar with the state of architecture at Chicago in general, let alone South Side. And so I was curious, is this sort of an ongoing problem of attracting architects? You mentioned that one of the last ones by Jeannie Gang, and who's like a current, you know, big name. But that seems to be like maybe, as you said, that was done at the same time as Aqua Tower, so maybe a little bit older work. Do you think there needs to be some concerted effort to encourage not just policies, economic policies, which allow for new development, but also maybe sort of, I guess, I don't know, social policy is the correct word, but encouragement to bring that attention there, so you don't only have the economic support, but also like the architectural support?
You know, that's a good question. You know, the economics, you know, the economics beat all, you know, in many respects. I mean, when the money is there, you know, one way or another, you know, Luis has a great project. I happened to shoot this just 2 weeks ago for an upcoming documentary for WTTW, but it's, am I right, Luis? It's a park building. I want to say it's 28th and State.
Yeah, it's right north of IIT. It's the Williams Park Field House.
Exactly, and I should have added it to this. I should have added to this presentation. It's a beautiful building. This kind of shimmery golden skin. Am I right? I mean, I was
stainless steel. Absolutely.
Stainless steel, beautiful, beautiful. I mean, you think of the Park Field House, which can be dreadful. You know, in previous years, some can be good, some can be bad. This one's a beauty. So the talent is coming to the South Side. It's just that the opportunities to build and design, particularly when you think about work that isn't subsidized in some way, you know, isn't where it ought to be. Now, hopefully, with the Mayor's Invest Southwest program, which is designed to put $750 million into some South and West Side communities of retail districts, retail strips over the next couple of years, that begins to prime the pump a bit and make some of these things happen.
And you know what? If you don't mind my tagging along, Lee, I think it is connected. Beautiful architecture cannot be done without people that trust and believe that it is worth investing in that beautiful architecture. The designers only can do their part, but we do not. So we experience, and I think I hope, and this might be sort of a recurrent theme throughout the South Side. But I know that Jose Luis and I, with STL Architects, we would have not been able to do that project without the support of the institution of the Chicago Park District. And without getting into specific names, the first impact, the first connection that we had with the project was one of defense. This is a project that we've done in public housing, in the center of a public housing project. And the first thing that we were asked to do was to do something very defensive, masonry, that impossible to break. And we approached it from a completely different angle. We thought that you need to treat the community with the beauty that is in the community. And if a building aspires to be as beautiful as the community that uses it, I think the community will own this piece of this building and will care for it like if it was their own. And we received the support of very important people within the Chicago Park District. And it is that support that enabled our vision to happen. I wonder, have you found the University of Chicago, Illinois Tech, all these really important institutions whose support will determine the ability of good architects and engineers to continue to improve the South Side? How have you seen that element of institutional support?
Not as strong as it could be. I mean, they tend to design well when it's within the boundaries of their campus. When they reach outside the boundaries of the campus to do stuff, it tends to be either it's okay. Particularly University of Chicago, I'm thinking about the work that they did or are doing, continue to do. Well, one exception though, along Garfield Boulevard, west of the university. I will say that the theater that they built as part of that gentrification. They're part of the rebuilding of that block between King Drive and Prairie Avenue. The theater actually is nice, so I take that back. But on the other hand, across the street, the university around the Green Line owns a lot of that land. If you know the area that's around there, the city owns a piece, CTA owns a piece, university owns a piece, and they just let it lie fallow. They're not trying to bring good design. They're not trying to bring anything there. So
Right.
you do kind of get this mixed bag when it comes to that.
May I ask, okay. That was wonderful, Lee. I have so many questions, but I will try to limit myself, at least at this point, to one. You talked about the Chicago Vocational School. I was really struck by both your personal reflections on that, and it's gorgeous. So when you say that there's a concern about it being, I don't know, removed because there's so many, they're not, it's not being utilized at its capacity, but couldn't there be just a lot of adaptive reuse possibilities there? Would they ever seriously consider tearing that down?
In Chicago, you never know. I mean, there are buildings that are, look at the Thompson Center, which is on the block. There are buildings that have wrecked that I thought, I still remember St. Basil Church. I'm sorry to, and I remember I was at the Sun Times. St. Basil Church was a beautiful church on Garfield Boulevard. I remember a reader called in and said they're tearing down St. Basil. And I said, you're full of beans. There's no way they're tearing that thing down. I sent a photographer there and he sent me back images of the dome, literally cut in half. You can look at it. I thought, I can't believe. So it could happen. But there could be adaptive reuse. It's huge. You have to bring smart folks to the table to figure it out. But even the 50 schools that Rahm closed, many of them, particularly some on the south side, far south side, are finding new life as housing. So, with that gymnasium, with that auditorium, it does make this building. You wonder if it just can't be a school for some reason, or the other spaces have to be used by something else while the other spaces are schools. It opens up a lot of interesting possibilities if the city, if the schools, if the leadership in the city is patient enough to let it happen.
There's a question in the chat from Mark Clark. I don't know, Mark, would you like to unmute and ask the question yourself?
Oh. No, yeah, does the speaker know about the, I believe it's a bank building on the street that leads up to the Skyway? Beautiful structure that I believe was turned into some kind of art collective or.
Yeah, this is the bank. It's called the Stony Island Arts Bank because the street that it's on is Stony Island. A bank that failed in the 1920s right after it was built. When I was a kid, the Nation of Islam owned it, and then had to sell it off in 1980, and it had been vacant for decades. And Theaster Gates got it, turned it into this asset for the community. You can go there, you can visit there, you can see art installations, you can see there's a library space in there that's just out of this world. So it is being used, luckily, thankfully. And that was a building that came really close. When I was in the mayor's office, me, Arnold Randall, who's now at the Forest Preserve District, we had to make sure that building didn't wind up demolished because there certainly was a sense that it had outlived its usefulness at the time because it had been vacant for 20 years. But it's up and running now.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Lee, I had a question I was going to ask. I'm really glad you showed the 41st Street Bridge, and it's good timing because I'm going to be giving a lecture that's going to touch on that bridge next week. So I'm gonna use your knowledge a little bit on it. I was curious about is it being used to the extent that it was expected to be used when they came up with the idea and built that bridge as a pathway for these communities to get to the lakeshore? Is it successful socially?
It really is. I mean, John Clark, the architect from what is it, Louise Cottagern and Clark. I'm pronouncing the first name.
Oh, Clark, yeah.
Yes, Gordon and Clark.
Jeff,
That's right.
Say it again, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Hogan Clark.
That's right. He photographs it pretty frequently, and there's people on it. When I was taking those photographs, the bridge wasn't quite officially open yet. What you can't see is that there's actually a guy in a truck painting the bridge behind me, and people are already almost running over with their bikes to ride the thing. And so it's used. It really is.
That's great.
We have Jim. You have a question. You so patiently have your hand up there.
If you never got to me, that was totally okay. But I thought I'd chime in and ask. Thanks. I'm sorry if I missed this question at some point. I was interrupted at a kind of early on, and you might have addressed this. And it's a totally unfair question to ask, but one that I want to know the answer to, and I'll probably spend many years figuring it out. Is what is the best thing that people who live and work on the north side, in particular work at a place like Northwestern, where we have a lot of skills and things to contribute. What in your view is the best thing that we can contribute to efforts on the south side?
I think if you're, I think for people who aren't policymakers, who aren't actively involved directly into the rebuilding of these communities, being able to lend your support if you see an issue in the paper. Voicing your support helps a lot. I mean, one of the impressive things that I liked about this whole controversy over General Iron relocating from Lincoln Park and trying to relocate to South Deering on the southeast side is that the residents of Lincoln Park, who essentially chased it out of the community, are vocal about saying, well, we didn't say chase it to the south side, and many of them have become allies. And the Southsiders fight to keep that metal scrapper from being operated. Those are the kind of things I think can make a big difference.
Thank you.
You bring up General Iron. I have a group of students that's working for the Southeast Environmental Task Force.
Yes.
With the Chicago Legal Clinic. I mean, we're sort of working on exactly that project, and it's so eye-opening to students to just see how that sausage is made. The whole permitting process, and it's really interesting. So I just wanted you to know that we are, we use these situations are such interesting educational opportunities for our students. And I think we're contributing, in helping the community understand the permitting process and what would involve an operation of that facility if it ever does, to be in compliance, because it was never in compliance when it operated in Lincoln Park.
That's right. And they promised to be better actors there, but as many of you know, there isn't much room for error. The southeast side, the toxic donut, right, is what it's called. Yeah. It's what brought Barack Obama here. This whole region of the city.
Altgeld Gardens. Yeah.
Exactly. Given over to industrial uses in the 20th century that ultimately is killing and harming the people who live around it. So yeah, good.
You know what, Kim? You should know that 3 representatives of Northwestern faculty, STL architects, and my partner Jose Luis and I are in the call now. And then you also have Booth Hansen, Scott Cyphers, as well as Mark Sexton from Crook and Sexton. The 3 of us are participants in a collective effort called ARC, All Reinventing Chicago, where we are designing pro bono structures, designing and funding pro bono structures throughout commercial corridors along the south and southwest of Chicago that have been particularly hit by the economic crisis of the pandemic, trying to help the businesses, those mom and pop operations that have been hurt so badly. There are faculty members within Northwestern that are doing what they can to provide a little bit of relief to this part of the city that finds itself like everywhere in the world, but probably with a little bit less means than other parts of the city trying to overcome this. So there's some things have been done by Northwestern.
And those things make all the difference in the world. You get a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and you start to bring the change that's needed.
So I have one more question, but I don't want to, hog the spotlight here. Do we have anyone else that have questions? I'm looking at my gallery here. Do you see any other questions, Dave?
I don't.
Okay, so my question is about the Yale building, which was, so beautiful. And you had mentioned that it's used for, is it used for affordable housing for retirement communities?
Yeah, affordable.
No, okay. So what's the story behind that? I mean, I'm surprised that there would be restoration to a building and then for it to be put to such, valuable social use, as opposed to having, high-end condos for.
Well,
so is there a story?
Well, there is, and part good and part bad and part good again, right? I mean, given the money it took, I forgot how much, was it 30 million? But it's 30 million, $1998 or something. Maybe it wasn't 30 million, maybe it was 15 million. I can't remember, but given the stack of cash that it took to restore that building, it wouldn't have survived as a market rate place. The units wouldn't have sold for that much. It couldn't have generated that much rent. But there was enough money on the public side to subsidize this kind of housing for seniors. There was funding set aside for that. There is a mechanism to support that. So as a result, this building doesn't become the regentrifier for the neighborhood. It really becomes something that fulfills a real need in the neighborhood.
Aha, okay. So that, I guess that was my other question, was just about gentrification. So often, like with parks, when you restore parks, what often happens is that then fuels gentrification, which pushes out the people that are there. So there's kind of this tug and pull. You want to increase property values, but you don't want to displace, right?
Exactly.
So when you did the park restoration, I can't remember that, did that increase property values around?
I'm sorry. Oddly enough, it didn't. There's a collection of interesting small-scale Victorian houses around there, and maybe a few houses from the 20s and an apartment building. I thought for sure that was going to, and they're all kind of struggling. All these places are a little kind of struggling. I thought for sure it would lift up property values there, and it didn't. There's a house. There was a big brick house that overlooks the lake that I remember was for sale back in '99, and it was 143. I saw the same house for sale 2 years ago. I think it was 173. So it didn't go up at all. Now Metra is adding a stop that stops right there to the Rock Island line. Maybe that can push things up a little bit. But again, I guess this is the part of me that's socialist. I like to see the values push up enough to allow the people who live there to be able to get, loans and things to send their kids to college and to fix up the back porch, but not so much that, it drives them out.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I could talk to you all day, Lee, so we'll have to figure out how to have lunch or, have you back for another seminar. But you've touched on so many issues about connectivity and investment and value in these communities that are, I think are really central to the kinds of discussions we need to be having and have to some extent in civil and environmental engineering at Northwestern. So I hope everyone will join me in thanking Lee again. This was just excellent. What a wonderful way to end our week. And the sun's out and a great presentation. And so I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And Luis, I owe you a thank too, for you made it, you're the ones who made the introduction. So thank you so very much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the great questions and for the response. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Mm-hmm.
All right, everyone, have a great weekend, a great safe weekend. And See you all later. And once again, thank you so much.